of Local 338 who work in the state's medical cannabis industry. And our folks are responsible for growing and producing medical cannabis, as well as retailing and counseling certified patients and caregivers. And we are joined here today by one of our members, Jonathan, who works at one of our dispensaries nearby. And through the work of our members, including Jonathan, we've seen the real impact that this important program has had on New Yorkers as our members help them better treat and manage their illnesses and the chronic pain that so many people suffer with. One of the other things that we're obviously very concerned about as a labor union involved with social and economic justice is the fact that with cannabis legalization, we need some real criminal justice reform. And we need a system that fosters both the entrepreneurial opportunities and quality union careers that provide good wages and benefits. The comprehensive cannabis policy has great potential for Long Island's economy. Farming, and we'll be joined today by a farmer here on Long Island. Farming is an integral part of Long Island's history and industry. And passage of this legislation that is before us in Albany will create and expand new opportunities for business and for all New Yorkers, good jobs. So it's rare that you have an opportunity to create an industry. And New York has the ability right now to pass comprehensive cannabis policy. It'll address decades of injustice, expands access to the state's medical cannabis program, create economic opportunities for small business owners, farmers, and workers from all across our state, including here in Nassau and Suffolk County. And we urge our elected official to pass this legislation before the June 19th deadline. And I thank you all for being here today. We have a number of representatives, part of our coalition, that are going to be here today. You'll hear from each and every one of them. One of the folks who could not be here today, Susan Goddard, who is the chapter director of the New York's Civil Liberties Union, asked if I would read a statement. The statement goes, marijuana prohibition has funneled thousands of New Yorkers into the justice system, often leaving them with criminal records that they carry for the rest of their lives. There is still time for the legislature to pass the MRTA and undo the harm caused by the war on drugs and invest in the communities that were most harmed by it. Again, that is from Susan Goddard, chapter director of the New York Civil Liberties Union. Now, it is my great honor to introduce a real leader in our state, one of our own here on Long Island, Assembly Member Taylor Rayner.
Hi, everyone. I'd like to thank Local 338 for bringing me out here to speak on a topic that is very near and dear to my heart. You know, as a new member of the Assembly, you don't know which subject matters you're going to really want to invest in, and this one just became a real big no-brainer for me, knowing that the communities that I represent in Hempstead, Uniondale, Freeport, Roosevelt have truly been impacted by the lack of legislation around legalizing marijuana for adult use. So Long Island, we know summer is coming, and we love to go to parties, and we love to go to the liquor stores and purchase things for our hostesses like rosé. And it's a beautiful thing that you can really confirm and have confidence that what you're purchasing is exactly what you set out to purchase. So we really gain nothing by pretending that marijuana is not used by adults from all backgrounds. When we finally decide to deal in reality, we can regulate the product and its availability to ensure quality, a safer supply chain, and limit access to people under age 21. We're also dealing with major systems of repression in New York State and here in Nassau County. When we have a law or laws that are only enforced for certain groups of people, then we have a criminal injustice system. We don't have any place for that here in New York State. There are people in New York who are serving lengthy sentences for marijuana use who have difficulty securing employment, housing, and having any semblance of a good quality of life. We have a really unique opportunity in the next 2 weeks to right a lot of wrongs, restore families, and rebuild communities that have been devastated. We have less than 2 weeks. Let's get this done. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker from the Long Island Progressive Coalition, Nia Adams. Nia?
Hello, my name is Nia Adams. I'm a community organizer with the Long Island Progressive Coalition. The Long Island Progressive Coalition is a 40-year-old community-based grassroots organization that works on a variety of social, economic, racial, and environmental justice issues. So when we're speaking about marijuana legalization, we're really speaking about the intersections of criminal justice and racial justice. In a criminal legal system, which we know disproportionately affects people of color, Black and Latino, people are four times more likely to be arrested for marijuana-related crimes. And as we know, we have our jails are filled with low-level drug offenses, nonviolent drug offenses. And although they represent a smaller percent of the population, they're being incarcerated at higher rates. So, and there's no difference between the use between people of color and white people and among different socioeconomic backgrounds. So, communities of color and low-income communities have historically and continue to be hyper-policed. And so when we're talking about legalization, we really need to talk about not just decriminalization, but decarceration, expungement of records, and reinvestments of communities of color most harmed by enforcement. That these communities need to be included in the new marijuana industry as a form of criminal justice reform. Thank you.
Thank you, Nia. Our next speaker is Onika Shepard, the Long Island Political Director of 1199.
Thank you. As unionized healthcare workers, we at 1199 have seen the devastating effect of marijuana and the criminalization of it through the years. For many people of color, being caught in possession of marijuana meant the inability to secure loans for college, having whole segments of the job market made off limits, not to mention the incarceration of hundreds of thousands of people. That's why the expungement of records for possession of small amounts of marijuana is critically important to our communities. We know that there are many people who oppose the legalization of marijuana for recreational use, and we would disagree. For reasons, we believe that marijuana can be safely regulated, keep out of the reach of children, and possess little or no effect of criminality. We believe legalization is an idea where the time has come for us to begin to legalize marijuana. 1199 also wants to go on the record for advocating for the representation of minority women-owned firms among those who are eventually granted licenses to sell marijuana. Our communities can't afford to sit by and watch others benefit while the state will benefit financially and other communities from the legalization of marijuana. Our communities would like to share also in the benefits. Thank you.
Thank you, Nika. Our next speaker is Shaniqua Levin, parent and founder of CEO of the Women's Diversity Network. Oh, there you are. I knew you were here.
Thank you for having me today. I am the founder and CEO of the Women's Diversity Network, and our mission is to connect and mobilize women of different backgrounds so that way together we can create positive change through a more unified sisterhood. And we totally and fully support the legalization of marijuana, as well as restorative justice. As a Black parent, I have to educate my children about how society treats them differently. They treat them differently than they treat white children. Even though studies show that white people use marijuana at the same rate as Black people, the rate in which arrests are made is not the same. We are arrested 4 times more than white people are arrested for doing the same thing. What are we going to do about that? This is another example of white supremacy. This is another example of systemic racism. This is another example of racial bias. This is another example of how we keep the war on drugs, keep our people down. What are we going to do about this? We can't stand here and act like our Black folks were not the main targets when it came to criminalizing marijuana, criminalizing our communities. My brother, my father, my cousins were arrested for this. They have charges that white people don't have just because they were Black doing the same thing. What are we going to do about that? They can't get the same jobs that white people can get, and they did the same thing. I'm all for passing and legalizing marijuana, but let's do it right. Let's let New York be a leader on how we do this right. Let's make sure that when we legalize marijuana, we legalize it the right way. We make sure that the communities and the people that were affected by the criminalization of marijuana are now receiving the justice that they deserve. Let's create pathways for them to get into these careers. Let's not just make this a thing for corporations to continue to get rich while my people continue to suffer. Let's make sure that we empower our poor communities. Let's make sure that the corporations just don't come in and our Black people are still sitting there being targeted. Some of these counties are saying that they want to opt out. They want to do this. They want to do that. But what about the fact that we are being arrested at a higher rate? What are you going to do about that? You can opt out and say you're going to do this and that, but if you're not creating restorative justice for Black people, what are you really doing? Racism is going to continue to exist. No, marijuana isn't going to be the thing that cancels out racism, that makes it much better, but it will help. It's a step in the right direction. Let New York be a leader and do the right thing.
Our next speaker is Dr. Richard Carlton. Carlton, please.
Hi everyone, it's really nice to be here and to tell you about myself as a medical cannabis provider. So the first thing that's really helpful to understand is there's receptors all over the body for the THC and for CBD. The reason it's so important to understand that is if you don't understand it, it seems like snake oil. Because how could the substance in this plant help seizures and cancer and arthritis and all these various conditions, 50 of them or so. So one of the most important medical conditions that I'm treating is pain. And a major problem in the country that we're all aware of is opiate addiction. And marijuana is really a major answer to the opiate crisis. In the states where marijuana has been legalized, hospitalizations for opiate addiction overdose, deaths from opiate overdose are down by about 25%. Imagine if it were really well known how well this works. Those decreases in deaths and hospitalizations could be even stronger. And it's great to see that on a societal basis, but I want to tell you about it on a personal basis as a physician treating. So I've had the honor to treat several combat vets from Iraq and Afghanistan and several firemen who were at ground zero after 9/11. Yeah, people with PTSD. The typical guy who was injured in Afghanistan is on opiates. When he comes home, he's drinking, he's homeless some of the time or most of the time, and alcoholic, really asocial. And this typical guy has a Marine friend who says, here, take this joint, take a couple of hits. and the guy smokes, and his anxiety goes way down. And over the course of a few months, smoking some marijuana, he's not having PTSD anymore. And I understand that, but what was really astounding to me was that he got off of opiates without side effects. I said, you withdrew from opiates, said you were on OxyContin, whatever it was, with no side effects? Yeah, no withdrawal symptoms. I got off of cigarettes with no side effects. Now your heroin addicts will tell you that it's harder to get off of cigarettes than it is to get off of heroin. So for people to be able to use marijuana to get off of cigarettes and alcohol is really phenomenal. So these guys go back to school, they get social, they're having a normal life. This is really important. One thing I would say to some of the opponents, one of the speakers mentioned, not in my backyard, opt out. Your kids are going to be doing marijuana anyway. It's on the streets. It's everywhere. If they want to get it, they're going to get it. It's everywhere. And so if you want to protect your child against addiction, there's an amino acid you can get in every health food store. It's called N-acetylcysteine, NAC. And it blocks all the major addictions. It can cause a little bit of nausea, but it's worthwhile because double-blind studies show that NAC cures the addiction to marijuana. And if there's psychosis from marijuana, that can happen. It's rare, but it can happen. CBD is a major antipsychotic. It's actually spectacular that this plant has both THC and CBD, because the CBD is an antipsychotic. And I got to tell you, because you wouldn't know this, that our major medical journals are carrying articles every month showing CBD is a potent antipsychotic equal to the major antipsychotics that are being used in psychiatry with no side effects. So please, let's legalize this product so that we can all have access to it, and so members of the communities that are really hampered by this, or harangued by the police, they can have an equal footing. So let's legalize this. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. I'm hopeful that your remarks are spread out so that people learn and are educated. And we are very involved with the medical marijuana when it was first promoted, and we have seen over the past 4 years the difference it has made in the lives of people suffering from cancer, children with seizures. It's just short of a miracle. Our next speaker is Brenda Davidson, founder of Goodwater. Founder of Goodwater Farms. I apologize.
I beat up a kid in high school. How you doing? My name is Brendan Davison. I'm the co-founder and farmer at Goodwater Farms. We are a farm on the east end of Long Island. We grow certified organic microgreens, and now we just recently got the hemp license for New York State. It was just a natural progression from microgreens into hemp, and then of course eventually into cannabis. This is a remarkable plant, and let me say that again. This is a plant that's for the people, by the people, and that can heal the people. So I urge Albany to make the right choice here and understand that this is a plant. And we are farmers. This is something that an industry that can help a lot of us get out of the poverty line, allow us to actually buy homes where we live. So I ask Albany and everyone to do the right thing and to legalize. Thank you.
Thank you, Brandon. Our next speaker is Jeff Frontell.
Frontale, but that's good.
Listen, for me, that's pretty close.
Yeah.
And Jeff is a pharmacist. Please, Jeff. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jeff Frontale, and I am a pharmacist with The Botanist, one of the ROs in New York State. I have been involved in the clinical following of patients over the 5-year period that the program has been in New York State. And I've seen firsthand the benefits and become a true believer in the power of cannabis. I've been involved in the front lines in a growing field. It's very exciting to be a part of. But there are the big issue for us is the limited access for patients. Some patients may have to drive an hour to an hour and a half in one direction to pick up the medication that they need for their family member who may be suffering from chronic pain or any number of serious diseases that the state allows. I know what I see in the field, and I can tell you that cannabis reform at a lot of different levels needs to be addressed, and access to the medication is a big part. What medicine you can get for yourself or a loved one should not depend on your zip code that you live in. When you're dealing with chronic pain, meds, the cost, and all these things, it makes it just that much more difficult. So I'm excited to be here, but what makes me even more excited is to be a part of a program that can gain access for all people throughout the state based on their needs. We endeavor to deliver the medication in a compassionate, effective, regulated, and governed in professional environment, and we look forward to continuing to focus on that mission. So thank you for having me.
Thank you, Jeff. Our next speaker is Jonathan Torres from the Minority Millennials.
How you doing? My name is Jonathan Torres, and I am the chairman of Cannabis Reform for Minority Millennials. I want to thank John and Jeff for having us here today. Really appreciate that. Minority Millennials works to solve, implement, and fund solutions to the social, cultural, and economic problems minorities, millennials, and the future generations of Long Island face. Legalizing marijuana is without question one of those problems. Right? Comprehensive cannabis reform will ensure marijuana is legalized, but legalized in the right way. The minority millennials on Long Island have a unique opportunity to utilize marijuana to enhance the social, cultural, and economic opportunities Long Island faces. Strategically, cannabis reform will implement for the expungement of provisions for prior convictions. Okay? Personally speaking, I unfortunately have been one of those people that have been affected by incarceration due to cannabis. I unfortunately was, my civil rights were violated in Nassau County, and unfortunately I'm dealing with that today. Fortunately, I'm an entrepreneur, so I do have several businesses that I have myself, but it has affected me in the workplace. From a medical perspective, I'm also a caregiver for my grandmother from New York State. She does hold the medical cannabis card for chronic pain. I firsthand have also seen cannabis, how it affects people that have cancer. And also, I'm a big proponent of it, so it could definitely benefit us in a financial way for Long Islanders, because many of us are leaving the county in Long Island, Suffolk, and Nassau County because we can't afford to live here anymore. So let's use some of these tax breaks that we could potentially have if we legalize it to help out some of these ridiculous property taxes that we have that's making everybody flight out of Long Island, including myself. Potentially things don't change in the near future. Thank you for your time, and let's get into it.
So, thank you very much, Jonathan. That concludes our press conference. I want you to know that each and every one of the people standing behind me are dedicated to reform justice for all citizens, looking for cannabis reform, legalization, but it has to be addressed socially as well as medically. It is important, it is critical, and it would be hiding your head in the sand by not addressing this issue. Our elected officials need to address this issue. This is not going away. People are suffering. Generations of people have suffered from the laws and have suffered from the lack of access to the wonders of cannabis. We have seen firsthand in our union, our members, our friends, and our staff, people who have suffered and who have found relief and a better quality of life because of medical cannabis. This is not going away. We urge Albany, members of both sides of the aisle, to have a serious conversation about the future of this industry, which is a positive for our state, for our county, and for our community. Thank you very much, and I'm sure, I didn't ask, but I assume people are willing to take questions, because this is not a shy group.
John, given that the Long Island delegation is seemingly responsible for so far the inability to get this bill passed yet, it seems like, that if the 6 members of the Democratic coalition actually got on board, it seems like we'd have to vote to pass. What do you make of the fact that the Long Island delegation seems to be the main holdup? That was the message.
Well, our message is that we would like to get this done. We think it is important. Our research has shown that it's not just the 6. There is pressure coming from different areas. There are some of the 6 that are against it. Some are unsure at this point, and the purpose of today is to educate them on it and to show the strength and the commitment by all of us here in the communities that we represent. And since they represent Long Island and we represent Long Island, it's a conversation that we intend to have.
And given that both Nassau and Suffolk are going to be opting out anyway, is there a limit to its practical impact in Nassau and Suffolk counties?
Well,
Because of the county thickets?
as the doctor said, that we had had this conversation with both legislative bodies. The fact that they would opt out, if in fact how the law is written, that they're allowed to do that, we're not sure that that in fact is going to be, and we don't believe it will be. But if you live in Belrose, which is Nassau County, and you go about 150 feet into Queens, and you buy some pot, then you in your backyard having a get together, or you have paint or whatever it is, and you're smoking, that doesn't protect you. There's no wall that goes up and says, oh no, this smoke can't come over here. And that's what we've tried to explain to the legislators in both Suffolk and to Nassau. Because they opt out only means that any financial gain that they might have, or job opportunities, or people to be entrepreneurs in those counties, they lose out on that. They don't lose out on the fact, and they'll lose out on the financial gains of it. But it does not protect, if that's what they're concerned about, that they are protecting children, because that's ridiculous in the sense of that anybody who has a child, look, we all are concerned about drug abuse. We are all concerned about the opioid epidemic. We're all concerned about that. But this is different, and it is not because they opt out going to protect Nassau and Suffolk County from marijuana being smoked in the county.
The governor in this case had supported legalizing marijuana in the state, but now has backed off because he doesn't believe that it can get done in this session. Is it even worthwhile to push for this year with just 12 days left, or not just go home and work on the next session?
We don't believe in giving up. Okay, we are in the business of making things happen. That's what all of us here do. And 12 days in Albany is a lifetime. I wish you would.
Miracles happen every day, and I do not believe in giving up, and I think that is we play a little time game, but this is really something that we really need to take care of this session, and we are putting all our energy into making sure that we are educating everyone along the way. It is 12 days, but I've seen it with my own eyes. When people are motivated to pass something, it can happen. This is a very, very big deal. It's a very big topic. It's very controversial. So we'll see. But we're having conversations every day. I am working with my majority leader, Crystal People-Stokes, to assist any way I can as a representative from Long Island, from Nassau County, where we do feel a lot of pushback. So anything that I can do or we can do, we are willing to do that.
Do you know what the financial impact could be for Nassau and Suffolk County if it is passed and they do agree to it?
Well, the underground market right now is somewhere around $2 billion, but it's underground, so they don't keep accurate records. But I would say, I've heard somewhere about 25,000 jobs directly, and something like 30,000 jobs indirectly. So, I've toured some dispensaries, I've seen the operations, And it is just, it's amazing what could happen, especially for our farmers here on Long Island and throughout New York State. You know, the agricultural business really needs that extra push to provide a product that will really help everyone in New York State who chooses to use it. Thank you.
Anybody else? Any other questions? If not, thank you all. I'm sorry, say something quick?
Sure. As being
I
a
wish you
farmer,
would. Please, go ahead, don't be.
This is a specialty product. It is not an easy thing to grow. It requires a lot of hands-on work, and it can create a lot of jobs. I mean, I'm underwhelmed in the past 2 weeks. I've been working 18-hour days trying to put seed into ground. I could use a lot of help. And then, especially in cannabis, there's so many abandoned buildings on Long Island from industries that have left. This is something that a lot of us are hoping that passes. So it's not just political talk. This can create a lot of jobs. I mean, a lot of jobs. So, you know, please help us in this. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I just want to say yes. Just want to say we don't even regulate cigarettes as much as we do marijuana, and cigarettes can actually kill you. Cigarettes can cause birth defects, right? Cigarettes can cause people that aren't even smoking the cigarette to be affected by it due to secondhand smoke. This is marijuana we're talking about that has all of these health benefits. Let's legalize it, and let's do it the right way. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming. Have a wonderful day. Appreciate that.